Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. Senior night, last game in Mackey Arena for the 2024-25 season takes place against Rutgers. It is 7 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday night, March 4th on Peacock. Last game on Peacock, maybe some of the Big Ten turn. No, Purdue won't play on the Peacock. So last game on Peacock, too, if that's something that people will be happy about, I don't know. But last home game, I believe just Caleb First will be the only one honored, unless there's somebody academically that is a senior that we're not aware of. A game against Rutgers that at this point in the season, their only hope for making the tournament is to win the Big Ten tournament. They are also not guaranteed a spot in the Big Ten tournament at this point. Has been an up and down season. We'll get into all of that. Purdue obviously beat them 68-50. That was back on January 9th, which we were talking about before. Feels like 5 years ago at this point. Although I do still think the totality of the season has gone by very quickly. Still feels like a long way to go. So I'll quit my rambling. Kraig, I'll throw it to you. Your initial thoughts about this game upcoming.
Yeah, I meant to mention it in the post-game show, but like there was a moment in there early on when you and I were in Mackey where I just turned to you and kind of said, we only get to do this 2 more times. I mean, that night and one more time. It does seem like the season has flown by. Been a lot of changes throughout the season and kind of big swings and big runs from this Purdue team, both in the positive and the negative directions at specific times. And obviously coming off that UCLA win after a 4-game losing streak, this is a spot where Purdue needs to continue that momentum against a team that they beat away in Piscataway already earlier in this year. Doesn't really, I guess the implications it has is on the Big Ten tournament. Still a chance to end up with a double bye. A lot's going to hinge on what happens today. We're recording this on Sunday, in case you're watching this on Monday. But still a good chance there. So obviously, still a lot to play for, and maybe as much as anything just to maintain that positive momentum that they got from the UCLA game, and of course NCAA seeding as well. I don't know how much you guys follow or track all of that stuff, but there's some difference in terms of where they end up on the seed line, not just in terms of who they might play, but also where they might play and kind of where they get preference from the committee to put them relatively close to where they're from and those sort of things. So a lot of implications still with these last couple of games and then the conference tournament to go. Like I said, Rutgers team that's kind of had an up and down season. They've obviously struggled with some things with Dylan Harper going through that stretch where he was ill throughout the season. We're not going to go back through each individual player. We kind of did that where the first time Purdue plays a team, we go through the entire roster and highlight them individually and really kind of dive into what their strengths and weaknesses might be. If you want to see a full rundown on the Rutgers roster, you can go back and watch that first preview show that we did. But Joe, everything kind of starts with this Rutgers team around Dylan Harper and around Ace Bailey. Obviously, they've looked good for large portions of the season. Dylan struggled when he was sick. Looked like he really had a hard time getting through that, but he's back now, right? I guess, what have you seen from Dylan and Ace as this season has progressed in terms of what they've done maybe since that early January meeting and who they are now?
Yeah, Harper is more or less back into that early season form where there was at least somewhat there was some sort of talk of like, hey, could Harper be the first overall pick over Flagg? Obviously, that is not going to happen. Cooper Flagg is insane, but Harper is back closer to that form where it's just a hard guard. Like, he is just really hard to guard. He can knock down threes. He can knock down step backs. He is absolutely awesome at getting all the way to the rim and finishing at the rim. His just change of pace and his body control, really unmatched. I mean, he's shooting 70% at the rim, 53% in the paints on non-rim twos. Both of those are really, really good averages for like centers, and he is doing it as a 6'5", 6'6" guard. Just really impressive stuff. And then the passing on top of it, he can facilitate for others. Now, And you probably could argue the assist numbers would probably even be a bit more if he had a better team around him. Um, can do a little bit of everything, like just simply put, and he's going to be a tough matchup. First time that they played, CJ was on him. He was sick, or Harper was sick, or recovering from like the illness, but he was not 100%. And he had 6 points. He was 2 of 9, 3 assists, 2 turnovers. So like Purdue did a good job, but it's just this is a different Dylan Harper than what they played at this point, basically 2 months ago. And then Ace Bailey's been like he's just been fun. He is still Ace Bailey. He's still going to have random moments and random games where it's none of the tough shot making falls, but he hasn't had too many of those recently. He's just can anybody that's watched Rutgers for probably like 10 minutes this year knows what I'm saying of just like he can just go get you a bucket. He'll pull up from the mid range. He's not going to be like ultra aggressive driving. He loves the mid range shot, but that's what he does. He's also been a pretty good rim protector in terms of being able to rotate and help at the rim. And for a Rutgers team that's not been good defensively pretty much at all, that's been a nice, added bonus, I guess, for Rutgers. So those two are going to be tough. Bailey had 17 points on 5 of 15 shooting the first time around. I thought it then, and I think it now. Caleb First is one of the players I think kind of built to at least make life tougher on Bailey. Like, right, Bailey just has those games where it's if you let him put the ball up, it doesn't matter if you have 5 hands in his face, like they're just going to go in. That's how good of a shot maker he is. But right, all you can do process wise, make those shots tougher. And I do think Caleb First is a guy that can do that.
Yeah, and I think the concern with any team in the Big Ten when they've played Rutgers this year is like, right, that Rutgers team in their totality this year just has not panned out to be near as good as Rutgers fans hoped coming into this season. And that's really in large part been around the fact that this team doesn't have a prototypical Pikel defense as we think about them in terms of what you've always come to expect from a Rutgers team. And while Pikel brought in some pieces from the transfer portal to put around them, obviously the loss of Big Cliff, I think, just damaged their defensive ability to protect the paint, protect the rim, and make things tougher on people. And some of those transfers maybe haven't panned out quite as well as they hoped, but nonetheless, have picked up some wins. Right? They do beat number 23 ranked Illinois at the time. They've had some games that were relatively close over some other top end Big Ten teams, not the least of being their last loss against Michigan, only losing 84-82 at Michigan. And there's always just this concern of like, you have 2 top 5 picks probably in the NBA draft, and at any given point in time, they may just both go on one in the same game, and they can hit incredibly tough shots. I think Ace Bailey is the best tough shot maker in the country, which is why I think he translates to the NBA so well. At the same time, he takes so many tough shots that he probably doesn't need to. But within that, you just have that concern at any given point in time. It's like, is this the night where they're both on and they're both hitting incredibly tough shots and go for 45 or 50 between the two of them alone? Because it can happen or more.
Exactly.
As we move on past them, there have been some roster kind of changes in terms of what Pikel's wanted to do. And I think, if I remember right, I think it really started with this Purdue game, right? Because I think Dylan Grant got extended minutes for the first time against Purdue, where he gets 15 minutes. I think you and I talked in the post-game show about him showing some positive energy and whatnot. And he's in the starting lineup. What else has changed from a personnel standpoint or from what Rutgers is trying to do? Has there been any major changes from January 9th to now?
I would say it. I guess against Purdue, I'm looking back. Tyson Acuff played 25 minutes. He has been, I feel like, more heavily involved off the bench and getting minutes where it's not uncommon for him to play 20, 25 plus minutes in any given night. I think Jeremiah Williams has maybe seen his minutes drop a few. You mentioned Dylan Grant's, right? When Purdue played him the first time, that was his second game of getting really legit minutes. And now he is starting. Bryce Dortch he'll get some spot minutes now. He burned his red shirt, um, and so he's getting some spot minutes. Kind of a similar build to Dylan Granch, like just a wiry kind of wing. Um, I think the other one, like he didn't even play against Purdue. Is Zach Martini's getting anywhere from 10 to 17 a game, and he is a guy that's purely just a 3-point shooter. He is 6'8". He plays a small ball 5 at times for them. Sometimes he plays the 4. Uh, just he has taken 12 twos all year. He has taken 71 threes. Like he is a shooter. Need to know where he's at. But besides that, no, I don't think it's changed too much. Right, with how Rutgers plays, and just Harper and Bailey are going to play every game. Williams is going to get 20-ish minutes for sure. Outside of that, it is a lot of just who's on. Jordan Derkak, he's seen his minutes. He's seen himself pretty much fall out of the rotation over the past few games, and he was a big part of the rotation in the Purdue game. So definitely some changes, really just based on like how many minutes a lot of these guys are getting. But at their core, Harper, Bailey, they're going to play as many minutes as they can handle, and that is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and maybe before we get into like how is Purdue going to try to attack Rutgers, I thought that was beeping in my background, Joe. I was trying to figure out what that was.
Yeah, my bad.
No, you're good. Before we kind of get into maybe how Purdue is going to try to attack Rutgers, how they attacked them last time, and that type of stuff, and how they might try to defend Ace and Dylan a little bit more. Just looking at Rutgers in the landscape of the Big Ten right now, right? Currently in conference, they sit at 7-11. They're 14-15 overall on the season. As of right now, that would put them in the Big Ten tournament, anywhere from 11 seed to a 14 seed. But they're only one game ahead of USC and Iowa right now. So there's a lot on the line for this Rutgers team. They get Minnesota in the next game after this to finish out the season, which hasn't proven to be an easy task of late necessarily to go up and play Minnesota. By the way, kudos and shout out to Ben Johnson for the job he's done with that roster. Just amazing job in my personal estimation. But nonetheless, Rutgers is somewhat still fighting to make sure that they get into the Big Ten tournament. This is a game coming in that, how do I want to put this? If we look at an NCAA seeding standpoint, the only outcome from this that affects NCAA seeding is if Purdue loses, right? There's not really a major bump or a positive to Purdue beating Rutgers. They have to beat Rutgers to maintain the seeding that they have, but it's not like it's going to bump them a line or anything like that up. But Rutgers comes in ranked 73 in the net. Now, if Purdue beats Rutgers, Rutgers goes up to Minnesota, if Purdue would happen to lose to Rutgers, and then Rutgers would go up to Minnesota and lose in the Big Ten tourney, you never know exactly where they're going to end up. It's already going to be this would be a quad 2 home game, right? If I remember the numbers off the top of my head, but could potentially end up being a quad 3. So that's one you really, really don't want to lose from that standpoint as well. I guess just that's kind of where Rutgers sits right now. They're not going to make the NCAA tournament unless they go on some amazing run. I'm not going to put it completely out of the realm of possibility, just because you have those two players on that team that could have some wild, crazy run in the Big Ten tournament, but it doesn't look likely, right? Joe, you having watched the last game where Purdue beats Rutgers at Rutgers, how do you expect them to try to attack Dylan Harper on the defensive end to try to slow him down as kind of the initiator of this whole offense?
You like Purdue on defense? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of their same principles that you've seen, over the past 2 months of I would expect them to be pretty aggressive. I also like Rutgers is a team. They are not the best 3-point shooting team. They aren't awful, to be fair. They are not an awful 3-point shooting team. But there aren't a ton of guys that you're like ultra worried about from the 3-point line. Right, Tyson Acuff, you do not want him to shoot. He's their best shooter. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, you don't want them shooting anyways. Like you're not expending extra effort to make sure they don't shoot threes because you're already locked in on them. And then you could like make the argument JaMychal Davis has shot well this year, but I would still just let him shoot and kind of prove it a little bit. Martini is, don't let him shoot. But what I'm getting at is, especially out of that starting lineup where they're going to start Bailey Harper, Jeremiah Williams, Lathan Somerville, and Dylan Grant, you can put Braden in a spot where he can kind of roam a little bit more off ball if you put him on somebody like Jeremiah Williams or Dylan Grant. And there's going to be switching. So I would expect a lot of help on drives. When Ace Bailey gets an eye post, they're going to force baseline like they normally do and double there. But Dylan Harper, it's just CJ, should be another bigger Miles game. Like those two, especially, just got to be able to get into him and make life tough. Dylan's going to get his points because he is that good. But, if First is involved in the ball screen, I would expect to see some high hedging. TKR will probably, I would assume, still be in drop, but even he could just be switching. I wouldn't be shocked to see him switch as well, and then they're just showing a ton of help in the paint and making Rutgers beat them from three. Again, Rutgers is not like an awful three-point shooting team. This isn't like Michigan State or Indiana or something like that. But at the same time, you still just want them to try to beat you from out there rather than the interior, because the Rutgers offense, it's been good over the last month or so. Per Torvik, 36th in the country in the month of February. It's just the defense has not been good, around 100th in that time as well. So offensively, they can get going. I would expect Purdue just pressure and helping a lot in the paints. If Rutgers starts making threes, you figure it out and adjust from there. But I would rather see, not actually, because if it happens, I'll be upset, but from a philosophy and process standpoint, I'd rather see Jeremiah Williams knock down 4 threes to beat Purdue rather than Harper go for 35.
I see what you're saying. This doesn't feel like, to me, we held Rutgers to 50, not 50s. We held Rutgers to 50 at Rutgers. This doesn't feel like a game to me where Purdue is going to be able to do that a second time. I just don't see Rutgers only scoring 50 points. So I think Purdue's going to have to put up some points. Obviously, it's at Mackey. Rutgers has not been great defensively. Purdue's looked really good offensively for the most part, so I expect that to happen. To me, this feels like a game that's going to end up more like 80-70 or something like that. Checking Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey to the level that they did a second time around just doesn't feel real feasible to me. On the offensive end, one last thing I was going to talk about defensively. This was in that run when Purdue really started to turn teams over at a much higher level than they had been all season. I think this Rutgers team averages around 11 turnovers per game, if I remember from my notes. And in the previous meeting, 11 turnovers per game. In the previous meeting, Purdue forced 16 turnovers. Obviously, in the last 5 games, they haven't been doing that quite as successfully. But against UCLA, they did force UCLA over their season average again. So hopefully this is a second game where Purdue can really get into those gaps. And against UCLA, right? To me, that's where they were getting their work done again, and where they had gotten their work done earlier is when they were able to kind of get in those gaps and force those turnovers there. And hopefully that continues in this game as well. On the offensive end, obviously, in the last game, if we're just looking what happened there from a point standpoint, TKR goes for 16, Braden Smith goes for 16, Fletcher Lawyer goes for 13. It kind of surprises me looking back on this game that Trey only had 16. Now, his scoring has ascended as the season has gone on. I believe I saw a stat yesterday. I don't know if it ended up that way at the end of the day or not, but I believe he's the leading scorer in the Big Ten right now. Is that correct?
If you give me 30 seconds, I can confirm or not.
I'm pretty sure that he is. So obviously that scoring has just continued to go up throughout the year. I fully expect this to be, just with the way Trey's been scoring the ball, to me, I see this being a 20-plus point type performance from Trey this second time around. But from what you saw in the last game, Joe, just how do you expect Purdue to attack this Rutgers team?
So to answer the
other than just high ball screen,
which it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of that. to answer the TKR point question, he's leading the league during Big Ten play
Okay.
specifically at 20.3, Bryce Williams at 20.2, Nick Martinelli at 20.1. And then on the entire season, I think he is third. He is behind Nick Martinelli at TKR's at 19.6, Martinelli's at 19.9, Bryce Williams at 19.7, and he is up above John Tange at 19.5. Just putting that out there. And TKR has more rebounds and more assists and more steals and more blocks and is shooting the ball better, which is just interesting. But regardless, it's going to be a lot of pick and roll. Brainsmith had 14 assists last game. Purdue shot 24 of 32 from twos at 75%. That was the game for people that maybe don't quite remember. Purdue won by 18, and they went 4 of 24 from three. Like they went 4 of 24 from three and 8 of 16 from the free throw line. There was a scenario if they just shoot close to average on either of those, or from three especially, like Purdue wins by 30. Obviously that we've already talked about. Harper's back, it makes them a completely different team, so you can't just like hold on to that. But this is a team that dominated the interior. If I'm remembering correctly, the short roll was there a ton. Brainsmith, yeah, it was, because Brainsmith just picked them apart. Like 14 assists, 2 turnovers. They didn't really have an answer. When Somerville's in, they're going to be in kind of that drop coverage, which I'm still, at this point, I understand teams have their schemes and you stick to what you know, but I just don't think it's ever a good idea to play drop against Purdue unless you're sending a crazy amount of help off of shooters, which if that happens, Purdue's got to knock down some threes. They did in that game. They did knock down threes last game. But we're in game what? This is going to be game 30. It's Braden Smith and TKR pick and roll. Like, it's just what's going to happen. You're going to get some TKR post-ups. I expect Purdue to once again try to dominate the paint. I'm trying to pull up the exact box score to see points in the paint from that game, but I think I got it now. 38 points in the paint for Purdue in that game, and they only scored 68 in the season, or not in the season, in that game. Another 8 from free throws, so 46 of their 68 came from either the free throw line or within the paint. I would expect them to just try that formula again, get to the rim. I don't think Rutgers necessarily is going to be great at staying in front of Braden Smith, and they don't have the best rim defenders as well. I guess that reminds me, the other big change within their personnel is Manuel Aguilé has been hurt, and he played 19 minutes against Purdue. He got hurt. He has come back the last 2 games, but he's only played 2 and 9 minutes respectively. That is the other change where like they do not have size down low right now at all, besides Somerville.
Yeah. I do not give gambling advice, but if I did, I would be hitting the TKR over on points pretty hard in this game personally. Other things that I'm looking to see, we saw more aggressive CJ Cox in that last game, just in terms of attacking a little bit and hunting his shot. I felt like we saw a little bit more aggressive Miles in terms of his ball handling, in terms of dribbling into that. We just haven't seen him. He used to dribble into that 18-footer, 15-footer. And was just money from there. You saw it in that last game. He shot comfortably in that game. We saw Cam go 1 of 2 from 3. I'm looking to continue to see that progression, and it's a progression that we've asked for all year long as Purdue fans, that we thought we would see. I would say it's never too late. It's slowly, to me, the Colvin and Heidi, like, getting their feel and shot back and higher shooting percentage, higher efficiency from that standpoint. It just feels like it's been slowly creeping back these last 4 or 5 games, even though that's mostly been in losses. There's still a chance, right? It can pop up, and not to maybe the point that we thought in preseason where we're like, man, one of those guys is going to end up averaging double figures, right? That's not going to happen. But certainly the positive signs that we've seen there could continue to grow and make big impacts in March. What else are you looking for in this game as we kind of round the corner here, headed towards the Big Ten tournament? Obviously, I have one more huge game at Illinois that Joe and I will both be at covering. But what else are you looking for as we kind of finish out this regular season slate and head into the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, I'm with you on Colvin, Heidi. Colvin and Heidi especially. CJ is it's not like I was ever like concerned about CJ. It's just sometimes he doesn't shoot the ball. But Colvin and Heidi especially, you hit on it. Like they are playing better. They are knocking down some more threes, super small sample size, yada yada. Like, but still, if like looking through this season, I would rather it play out this way than them, you know, starting out super strong and fading. Like if I was to have to pick one of those two options, right? We talk about you have to peak at the right time in March. That's half the battle for making a tournament run, unless you're just like a crazy dominant team. Um, Obviously, Purdue as a whole, I don't think you would say is doing that right now, but have another chance to get back on track. But Heidi and Colvin specifically, um, they are going to be needed in some capacity. So you need to see them keep building. CJ, like you said, if he can keep building. And the other thing is just, right, you got the monkey off your back. You beat UCLA. You stopped the losing streak. Can they just like put 2 games in a row? Can they just kind of come out and just put this one away, right? UCLA, you don't expect to put them away. That's just with how UCLA plays. But this Rutgers team, you are better than. Can you just come out and put them away right away? Not even make this a game? Or are we going to see another game where they're going to be really battle tested and it's going to come down to the wire? Uh, Not saying that they won't win that game, but I'm just going to be curious to see that because I would like to see them just have some sort of dominant performance before March, right? Right now, and there's only a couple games to do it, or before March Madness, I should say, because it is March. Want to see them do that, hopefully just once at least, and this is probably the game to do it.
Yeah, I think this is the game. If you're going to look at one on the calendar, I think at Illinois is still going to be tough. That Illinois team is obviously like there's not been larger pendulum swings for any team in the Big Ten than Illinois this year. But right now, it feels like that pendulum swinging back up just a little bit, maybe for Illinois. So that's a tough place to play when Illinois is good, also. So don't know that you're going to get a big punch out blowout win at Illinois. And then obviously you got some Big Ten tourney games, depending on where Purdue ends up falling in that. Still going to be playing probably, top 8 teams in that league, depending on what happens in the games before. This is a good spot to do it. Joe, I think as we finish out this season, one more game against Illinois, then Big Ten tourney. So we'll have the post-game show after Rutgers. We got one more preview show for Illinois, one more post-game show for Illinois in terms of the Big Ten season. Likely once the Big Ten tournament is announced, I'm assuming you and I will do something about Purdue going into the Big Ten tournament, kind of previewing that path in the first game. Also planning at some point to have Tonsoni on to talk about bracketology a little bit, where Purdue might end up seated, maybe kind of Big Ten at large a little bit as well, like we did last season as well. So other than that, Joe, got any more takes?
Do I have any more takes?
Or I shouldn't say takes. Any more things to add?
So I do got
as
takes,
we wrap up?
but no.
Yeah, I feel like you did have a take that you were trying to make a subtle jab at there in regards to TKR
No,
in his position for Player of the Year or all Big Ten.
TKR should be a lock for Big Ten first team. That I'm very confident in. I do think it is a legit race between Smith and Tanjay for Player of the Year. Also, it was interesting. Like I've interacted with some people on Twitter, and I don't even think it's like a negative Purdue bias. I think it's just what they feel like. There are probably more people than I thought that value later in the season for Player of the Year award than I expected. For me, it's an entire season award, but at least there was a few people that made the argument, of like games get tougher because scouting reports get better in that, and like I sort of get it. I do think it's a season thing. I think, right, if we're talking hyper specific, I mentioned to you, I liked at the end of the UCLA game, I was like, hey, I like Braden getting these free throws, like just boost his numbers as much as possible. If it gets to that point, like this could be another game where Braden Smith had 16 and 14 against Rutgers. Like a performance like that, or a 20 and 10 type game, like I don't think it shuts the door on the race, and we'll see what John Tanjay does today as they play Michigan State. But it's a game. It's an opportunity for him to put up big numbers, and at this point, kind of got to do that. I think just to get some of the momentum and get locked back into Player of the Year for sure. But should be a fun race between the two. But no, Purdue will absolutely have 2 players on first team All Big Ten. I will be a little bit not a little bit. I will be upset if they don't. I also like Jean
Yeah.
Tonje. I was being a little facetious.
Oh no, I think he's been incredible, no doubt about it. But you talk about you know, it being tougher to have big performances down the stretch, right? So if we look at, and I'm not making a case for TKR for Player of the Year, just to be clear, because I think if you're a big, you have to do a little bit more defensively and from a rebounding standpoint to earn that honor. But this is Trey's last 11 games scoring: 23, 26, 15, 23, 25, 24, 22, 30, 24, 9 at Indiana, 29 versus UCLA. Like the closeout to the season from a scoring standpoint for Trey has just been ridiculous for the most part, as long as he's not been in foul trouble.
Yeah, it really has. Because then if you look at Tonje, his numbers are nuts. Since January 21st, 24, 27, 23, 27, 15, 22, 32, 31, 22, 13. Couple not super efficient games in there though, as well with that. But right, it's not. It's probably it's a little bit better than TKR's, but it's not too much better over that span.
Yeah,
so
it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch all these postseason awards. Maybe you and I can slide that into one of these preview shows or something like that throughout our all Big Ten teams or something real quick. I don't know, but
all right,
yeah.
What game? 7:00 Eastern Time, Tuesday, March 4th on Peacock. Rutgers comes to Mackey Arena, where they've actually. I guess we didn't talk about this. I know this team is 1,000% different than past Rutgers teams, but Rutgers has had some success in Mackey Arena in recent years, at least one off the top of my head. Gotta just play well, gotta come out strong. We'll recap and break down everything you need to know from the game following the game. So make sure to like, subscribe. If you turn on bell notifications, you'll be notified as soon as we do go live. That again is 7:00 Eastern Time on Tuesday, March 4th. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you after the game for the live post-game show.